Who's more dangerous to children, strangers or trusted family members? Let's find out. Okay, so somebody that's following the work that I put out there has just sent me this video. It's a TED Talk, which if you've never come across TED Talks before, please go and check them out. They are interesting, informative, engaging. They're excellent videos, and I hope to one day manage to get myself on TED Talks as well. That would be an incredible achievement. But for this video, this is a lady called Emma Jane who does a lot of work around raising awareness for child sexual abuse. And the title of her TED Talk is called, "Is It Just Strangers That We Should Be Careful Of?" I think it's going to be really interesting. Let's get into it.
When I was a little girl, I was petrified of the man in the van. I was never petrified of the friend of the family. I was taught to be careful of strangers. I was never taught to be careful of the people I knew. I'm now 48. Time has changed nothing. The man is still in his van and I'm still petrified. But more importantly, it doesn't seem to occur to anyone that we should be more cautious of the people we know, or more specifically, the people we know who behave in a way they shouldn't. Because then what? What child knows what to do then? I didn't, and nor did millions of others. Statistics report that of those that have been sexually abused as a child, 90% knew their perpetrator.
Okay, really, really great introduction to her talk. Really great. To put the statistic in there is fantastic. I've heard that statistic a number of times. 90% of people who go through some form of child abuse know their abuser. To anybody that doesn't have a link to these subjects or has no connection with this subject, maybe they don't know anybody that's ever been through something like this before. It's never really been on their radar. That is a statistic that's mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. How could somebody within the family or somebody connected to the family want to do that to the child? The fact is they do, and this is, like she said, 90% of the cases are coming from somebody that the child knows. I feel like the way she's started that talk is fantastic, because she says, do we need to be more careful or worried about the people who we know within the family? Which caused a bit of friction inside of me, because I don't feel like we should be walking around just paranoid about everybody that's connected with our family or in the home. But then she says, anybody that's close to the family that's behaving in an unusual way, because how is a child gonna deal with that situation? So it's for the adults to recognize that. That was really nice. I really like what she said. So, okay, let's continue.
So if we continue to educate young people on that basis around the concept of stranger danger, then we are only educating a very small 10% out of the millions of children being sexually abused every year by someone they know.
Great.
So why?
Great statement.
Why are we still sharing the message about stranger danger when clearly the greater danger for children is much closer to home? The misalignment of that 90-10 statistic, combined with the guidance we offer young people, produces a stark reality. Young lives are being catastrophically ruined. As a child, I was groomed and sexually abused. We knew my perpetrator. This man crawled out of his darkness and into my life with a bag full of kindness and generosity. He was nice to me. I had a new friend. He took a great deal of time to nurture and understand me. He made me feel less lonely. He seemed to show up in my life at just the right time. I was firstly drawn to his kindness and that he made me feel listened to. And I liked that he showered me with shiny nice things. And in the blink of an eye, he'd created a bond that I valued. But crucially, as that child, nothing seemed wrong. I speak to survivors of child sex abuse all the time, and each story is heartbreaking in its own right. But despite the unique and unbearable pain that associates itself with each abuse survivor, the common denominator remains the same. They knew their perpetrator. And by the way, no one tells you that you might actually like your abuser, or that you may already love them, and that later on in life you will be riddled with complexities around this feeling.
Okay. Let's just stop it there for a moment. Did I press the wrong button? Or are we still good? Right, we're still good. Okay, so many incredible things that she's saying here. Something I feel that is just so difficult for people to get their head around is this concept that the child likes their abuser. She even said, didn't she, in some cases loves their abuser because their abuser is their friend. Their abuser is giving them something that maybe they're not getting elsewhere. Their abuser is creating a bond with them. Their abuser is showering them with compliments. And you know, it hasn't always got to be so... It's not always the way that the media portrays it. It's a problem that the media portrays it in one way all the time. It is quite possible that there is a connection being made between the abuser and the child. And I know I have to be very careful when I cover areas like this and talk about areas like this. I know I need to be very careful with my words, because actually we could say that the relationship that is being built between the abuser and the child is, in some situations, and bear with me on this, it's a two-way street, because the abuser is getting what they want and the child is getting something out of it as well. They're getting something out of it as well. Maybe it's confidence that the abuser is, like she mentioned, showering the child with compliments and maybe making them feel less lonely if that's their situation, or making them feel, as I just said a few times, making them feel more confident about themselves if that's something they're lacking, or it just becomes like this friendship. So then we're like, well, how the hell does sex come into it, right? How the hell does sex come into it? Now, when we think about it, it's not always going to be penetration. In fact, I heard somebody talk about it recently on a podcast that actually it's a minute amount of child abuse is penetration, because that's painful for the child, and the abuser doesn't want to do that to the child because of many reasons. First of all, it's going to scare the child off. Next, it's going to leave marks on them that are detectable. Next, the child won't understand why that person is hurting them. Sometimes it's just going to be cuddling, kissing, touching, fondling. It's going to be things that are gentle, that the child can be programmed to think is love, because no one else is telling them otherwise. They've been groomed, they've been programmed. We need to talk more about these parts of abuse. We need to. It's so important.
How to cope. You definitely won't understand trauma bonding or appreciate what it means to be triggered by a familiar smell, piece of music or place. You won't understand that you will need to learn about PTSD to start understanding how best to exist in your life. And you definitely won't know that to cope, you will probably need to dissociate or avoid a conversation that could trigger a feeling, or at worst, an abreaction. The whole thing's a mess. The complexities around child sex abuse are huge, and I am only scratching the surface. As children, we are taught to respect our elders. Be polite, listen, don't answer back. Adults know best, they are our teachers, and as children we trust them. But what about turning that premise on its head? Giving children a new education that would give them the tools to protect themselves if ever faced with a difficult situation.
Come on.
Have you ever empowered your child to be able to say no to an adult they knew? Have you ever stopped to ask your child what they would do if an adult they knew asked them to keep a secret?
Brilliant question. Have you ever asked your child if they know what to do, or what they would do if if an adult approached them in some inappropriate way, and you could list those ways. If an adult asked to touch you in a private area, or if an adult asked for you to touch their private area, does your child know what to do if that situation occurs? And I suppose that question that she's posing there, would need to be age appropriate. Of course, it needs to be age appropriate. 5-year-olds, you'd ask the question very differently to 10-year-olds to 15-year-olds. But has that question been asked? Are children of today's generation feeling confident enough or empowered enough to say no to an adult when something is happening that is making them feel uncomfortable? Because we're teaching children that adults can do no wrong, and that adults should be listened to, and adults should be respected, as Emma is saying in this video. But are we also teaching them? And I don't want to say that, we shouldn't teach children to respect their elders. Actually, as I just said that, I thought to myself, why are we not teaching children just to respect everyone, period? Wouldn't that just be a bit better? Why only adults? Respect your friends as well. So, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that, but to teach children to respect others. But we should also teach children that it's well within their right, if they are asked to do something that they feel uncomfortable with, or somebody is making them feel uncomfortable, that we can give them the confidence and the strength to let somebody know that I feel uncomfortable around this person, or say no to that adult if they were to ask them to do something untoward. Great points.
And are you confident knowing that wherever your child is, they are armed with knowledge and a language that would protect them? As a child, the thought of saying no to an adult and someone I knew would have just felt rude. And I probably would have been told off. But if that adult was a menacing stranger, then I had full permission to not only say no, but to scream and shout and do anything I could to draw attention.
Great point.
Of course, this isn't about being scared of everyone we know and love. But it is about giving young people the right tools to know how to handle difficult situations. And this may well be an uncomfortable conversation to have. But if we want to make a difference, if we want change, and if we want to make sure that children aren't being stripped of their innocence and left with traumatic challenges for the rest of their life, then that uncomfortable conversation is a low hurdle to jump.
Okay. Now, I have talked about this so many times, so I apologize if you feel like you're hearing it so many times from me. But why is this conversation about private areas? Why is this conversation about encouraging confidence in your child to speak up if they feel uncomfortable about anything? Why is that conversation uncomfortable? Why is that conversation avoided when compared to the stranger danger conversation? What is the difference? It drives me insane. We're okay to say to a child of any age, right? As soon as they can understand words, we're all about the stranger danger conversation. As soon as they understand words, don't talk to anybody you don't know, because they may take you away from mummy and daddy. Do you think that is not scary for a child? Let's take a 7-year-old, when we have told them 100 times about stranger danger, that somebody could take them away from mummy and daddy. Do you think that hasn't sent shivers up that child's spine? Do you not think that has made the child look at the world as in like a dangerous way? But I understand that piece of advice is absolutely essential. Children need to know about stranger danger. Unfortunately, we live in a world where children need to know this, so we teach children this, and we got no problem about it. It's universal. It's across cultures, right? It's across cultures that conversation is being had with children from the time that they are so young. But why can't we just tell them about the areas of their body that nobody is to go near? Why can't we tell them that sometimes adults may ask you to do something that's uncomfortable, and that if they do, you're allowed to say no, and you should say no? What's wrong with it? Why do we feel like we can do one but not the other? And why is the question. And I feel like the answer to that question is because the private area conversation is to do with sex. We're so embarrassed to talk about sex. We're adults. Pull it together. Come on. This is so important. This is so crucial. We need to turn this situation around. We need to. I'm going to say it again. For me personally, so far in this video, how far are we? We are just over halfway. We're just over halfway. I feel she's articulating herself really well. I feel like she has written this very, very well. She's making incredible points and it's very engaging. Let's continue.
Protecting children seems like the most natural thing that a parent can do, but the guidance being shared with this focus on stranger danger is just not aligned with real life. I recently asked 50 children aged 4 to 16 years old what they thought the word inappropriate meant. The majority of the responses I received showed no real comprehension of that word, but more importantly, these responses and the lack of understanding would not protect a child standing in front of a potential groomer. I then wanted to know what these children thought the word trust meant, and whilst the comprehension of that word was much more solid, there was still confusion around when and when not to allow trust. Trust can be really misconceived when used in inappropriate circumstances. So if we are telling children to trust by letting someone in to help make them feel safe, then this could be opening dangerous doors. And here's the rub. Of course we need to keep children innocent and enjoying the magic of their young lives with the people they love. But how can any child judge a situation if they cannot distinguish between right or wrong?
Facts.
I often thought I was the luckiest girl in the world when I met that new friend who showered me with shiny nice things and kindness. But this quickly transitioned to child sex abuse, and that was just me. Multiply that by millions of children around the world being sexually abused every year by someone they know. I see warning signs in children all the time and behaviours that are just not normal for children. I find it incredibly frustrating that no one is asking the right questions or listening to that young person clearly suffering. I recognise now that my behaviour as a young girl changed rapidly, and it wasn't long before I was in junior psychiatric care being labelled a juvenile delinquent, being told I was a failure, the girl going nowhere.
Okay, wow. So she's obviously, she's given a little bit of her story and how she has suffered following her experience of being abused as a child. Let's just quickly go back, just briefly, just to say what she just talked about there.
And it wasn't long before I was in junior psychiatric care being labelled a juvenile delinquent, being told I was a failure, the girl going nowhere.
Okay, wow. Now, the reason why I want to just comment on that point is we can see how the abuse has affected Emma here and really driven her life off the rails to be in a junior psychiatric ward. That's intense. But what I also want to add to that is not every child is showing signs, or not every child. No. Let me start again. There is such a varied amount of reactions to this type of experience as a child. Some are showing their reaction in their behaviour early on. Some are speaking out early on. Some never say anything until they're 30, for example. Some are acting out behaviours in their 20s that are a result of the abuse. Some are are not able to hold it together. Some are. I'm just saying that. What am I saying? What I'm saying is, I don't want people to think that it's always that you can always spot when it's happened. It's not always the child in the corner who's got no friends following an experience of abuse, and that you can tell. I say that from my own experience. I was somebody who didn't start speaking about this until I was 27. The abuse finished when I was 10, and I was your usual kid who was just doing well at school, playing sport, lots of friends. There's just so many variations to this. Yeah, I just wanted to get that in there. I just think it's such an important point. Okay, let's continue.
A few warning signs of something more sinister. I made it my personal responsibility to find out more on the 90-10 statistic by engaging in holistic conversation with people from all over the world. I've spoken to survivors, authorities, whistleblowers, prison officers, therapists, support groups, charities.
Wow.
And sex offenders.
Wow.
By listening to these voices on the subject of child sex abuse, we can introduce conversations that can bring about change, fundamentally offering greater protection around young lives. We can educate young people to understand what healthy relationships look like, and by using this education, we can then guide young people to recognise what a potential groomer might look like, giving young people the right tools to be able to cut the perpetrator off before anything sinister happens. Have you dug a little deeper with that child who just seems, well, different? Have you dug a little deeper with that child whose behaviour has just changed? Maybe that child is suffering in silence and needs you to be brave for them. My determination to have these uncomfortable conversations is anchored around a desire to see children sleeping peacefully at night with happy dreams, not nightmares that darken their days and strip them of their childhoods. On many levels, the subject of child sex abuse continues to be the elephant in the room. I've been with people who just don't want to hear about these stories because it upsets them. But what about the child that's been degraded and traumatised? What about their upset? How about lending a more patient ear to the child attempting to tell you about the darkness in their life, or being more aware of warning signs pointing towards a bigger and more important consideration? This is clearly a huge beast of a conversation that not many want to fully acknowledge or engage with, but we need to, because it is a life-destroying reality. Once you have been sexually abused as a child, your life changes forever. You don't live the normal that others talk about, because you will never know what that means. Let's start having these uncomfortable conversations, because somewhere in the world right now, a child is being sexually abused by someone they know.
Okay. That's really good, Ja. Okay, that's really good. I feel like she's done an incredible job. It was easy to understand. It wasn't overly graphic in any way. It was something you can watch and not a viewer wouldn't find too uncomfortable that they'd need to stop it halfway through. It was really nice. She articulated herself really well, I thought. She made some excellent points. She's obviously all about prevention. She's obviously done so much work around this. I'm going to try my hardest to now, when I post this video, I'll send it to her and see whether she wants to have a conversation, a recorded conversation, to just explore what she's done. I'd be very interested to speak with her. There is something that I did notice on the video, which I feel some resistance to. It's just one point that I'd like to add, and that is when we start saying things like, towards the end of the video that she mentioned, if you experience child sexual abuse, you will never know what normal is. And, if you experience child sexual, like, just to take the kind of the feel of it, the summary of it, if you experience child sexual abuse, then, your life is going to be a roller coaster ride that it wouldn't have been before. What I'm worried about is that if we talk about it like that, then let's take teenager that's now starting to face the memories of what happened to them when they're a child, or let's just take somebody, for example, in their early 20s, and they're now really remembering about what happened to them as a child, but before that they completely blocked it out, and now they're watching people like Emma talk about child sexual abuse and its prevention in a very empowering way, like she has. It's not criticism, it's my observation. I wouldn't want that person in their early 20s or late teens to hear those words and be like, oh, you can't be normal if you've been through child sexual abuse, or everything is going to be really chaotic now and I'm going to experience PTSD, and then all of a sudden they don't know any different, and their life is, they start thinking that that's what's going to happen to them, which then means that it's definitely going to happen to them. I do feel like there are many people who went through child sexual abuse who just parked it, and I don't know. I just think there's many results of an experience of child sexual abuse. So if I can get hold of Emma and get her to, we could do a recorded conversation and post it. Maybe I could ask her these questions, or get her opinion on these questions. But yeah, overall, I just thought this is fantastic, and let's do more of these TED Talks. Check them out. We're moving forward. Thank you.